Hello, everybody. I hope you all had an excellent fall break. I had a good time reading through your argument diagrams. All of those have both grades and comments from me now, so if there's anything that you disagree with or are confused on as far as your grade for that, definitely let me know and I'm happy to talk about that. Remember as well that the midterm is now available. You can do that through Canvas, and it's not required to do a testing center or anything like that. It's multiple choice, true, false, matching, follows a really similar format to the quizzes that you've been doing on Canvas. So make sure that you do that on Canvas. You have 25 questions and 60 minutes to complete the questions, and that will close on October 27th. So in addition to that, remember that your topic paper and annotated bibliography is due this Friday. If you have any questions along the way, definitely let me know there. People have been asking if you can go over 3 pages total, and that's okay. You can go a bit over if like your annotated bibliography runs over, that sort of thing. But just make sure that you're following the assignment guidelines that are in files under Canvas for that particular assignment. I'm happy to answer any questions through email. Remember that your topic is one that you'll be sticking to for your argumentative essay and then arguing against in your refutation block. So be ready to pick a topic that you can argue the other side of. So I want to get a head start into Chapter 8 material. Chapter 8 is not required for the midterm exam, but it is helpful as you get ready for the next set of quizzes and activities. So we've been talking over the course of the semester about values. In the first chapter, we talked about different types of claims, and one of those big types of claims are value claims, where you elicit like different things that we should believe in and do. So think about Chapter 8 as getting in much more detail into what values are. You can also think about values as a major reason that there is a high degree of disagreement and polarization in things like contemporary American politics, because people have very different sets of values and beliefs that they have, so making arguments and trying to appeal to decision makers oftentimes comes with very different sets of values. So when you think about values and how they work, one of the biggest types is stated values. So stated values are really clearly articulated, right? Like, so when you looked at Snowden, right, it's a question of, do we value something like freedom or do we value national security? Those are very clearly articulated and stated values that somebody might have on that topic. Moreover, we also have implied values, and rather than spelling out the value, an implied value suggests that a particular value is being elicited even if it's not stated. So for instance, if I told you that you should put on your seatbelt when you drive, you could suggest that I'm implying a value of safety. Even though I'm not directly saying safety, by putting on your seatbelt, I'm suggesting that you should be safe. So when particular comments are made that seem to be appealing to a value, we can say that that's an implied value versus a stated value that's actually stated. We can think about values in terms of what one should do or should believe in, or what one shouldn't do or shouldn't believe in, right? So a positive value you should think of as something somebody should do. So a positive value might be honesty. We should value honesty, and we should be honest and upfront to each other about things. That would be a positive value. Meanwhile, you can think about a negative value as what somebody shouldn't do. So dishonesty is a negative value because we shouldn't be dishonest, or greed is a negative value. We shouldn't be greedy, right? So there can be both a positive and a negative type of value that you see. Another thing is the difference between terminal and instrumental values. When you think about terminal, right, think about the end point, where things like end up, right? So a terminal value suggests that that value is valuable in of itself. So something like freedom is valuable not necessarily because it serves something else, but you might say that freedom itself is valuable. Or life. You could say that life has value not because it serves something else, but because life in itself is important. If something for its own sake is valuable, then it's a terminal value. However, if something is an instrumental value, you can think about it as a step in order to reach a terminal value. So an instrumental value might be something like having good wages. You could say that having good wages is an instrumental value. We should value that because it serves something like life or a good quality of life. So you could also say that, for instance, the right to vote is a value that we should have because it's instrumental toward freedom or toward expression or toward democracy. So all of those things are instrumental values because they go and ultimately serve a terminal value. We also see the difference between abstract versus concrete values. So an abstract value is something like freedom, right? So freedom doesn't necessarily get pegged to a particular object. We just say something like freedom or something like honesty is a good thing. Whereas a concrete value identifies a particular person or group or object or item that we're expected to value. So it's concrete, right? It exists. It's material. So a concrete value, one example that's given in the textbook is a flag. Another example might be a museum or a monument, right? There's a lot of dispute about Confederate era monuments, statues, and flags. So that could be an area where there's a lot of clash over values and the concrete value that's being ascribed, positive or negative, to that particular monument. We also see that there are value systems, right? So there's a set of claims that somebody might have on a particular topic. So if somebody says we need to value things like health, as the textbook explains, right? Like maybe they say that there's an objection to marijuana as well as cigarettes because it adversely affects health in that instance. So we can see that somebody has a particular value, and that might affect the views that they have on a variety of different positions. So if somebody has a particular value about the American flag, then we can see that that affects a lot of things, including the way that the flag is displayed, positions on things like burning the flag, right? A variety of different positions that are informed by that value. So values appear in those systems. We can see, right, that there are various value systems throughout history. So things like freedom and things like security have been valued over time. We also see that there's questions of ethics that emerge. You can think about ethics as kind of going back to Greek and Roman philosophers, right? So if we think about Aristotle and Socrates, they talked a lot about what is good, what is right. And ethics gets to that question. How should we behave? How should we believe in certain things? What values should we have? So perhaps good ethics means that we're honest with each other, or that we donate extra money that we have, right? Those could be seen as part of good ethics because they tell us how we should be or how we should behave. So you can see that ethics might be used in making value claims about what might be good or desirable to do. We can also see that value claims happen all over the place. When you think about the Tolman model and using things like arguments by sign or analogy, or even things like an enthymeme, right? So that's an implied syllogism. It has one part missing. Then values are being elicited. So you might say something like, we need to increase our defense spending to boost security. The enthymeme is having that implied premise that security is a good thing or security promotes safety, right? Security is a value, perhaps instrumentally because it serves things like life. So we can see that values can happen all over the place in terms of arguments. We see that that happens in terms of things like warrants too. So warrants can demonstrate why the grounds fit with the claim by showing that a value is happening. You can also see that you can attack values in a variety of different ways, right? So if you are disputing things that are really politically contentious, like what is the role of government, to what degree should the government be involved in things like the market, then you can see that there's a variety of different positions that are possible to take. So you can say, for instance, that this value is not necessarily a good idea or doesn't necessarily fit with the decision makers. As we've talked about this semester, right, to make compelling arguments, you really need to make arguments that appeal to the decision makers, the biases and the beliefs that the decision makers have, right? So if you think about what is it that this person values, if you're talking to a friend, what's been important in their life? What is their political orientation? If you're talking to a professor or a teacher, right? What are the things that are important to them? What values are they trying to espouse upon to students? And so the claims that you make either fit in the context of those values, or you make the more challenging determination of going against those values and suggesting why their values are incorrect. So that's how you kind of do that refutation. You can also use evidence, right? So evidence can be used to show why a value is a good thing. So in a world where we value security, we see fewer deaths or greater prosperity. That might be an example. Or you could make the other side and say, when we try to value security, we actually cause greater insecurity in other regions of the world. There are a couple examples that the textbook gives in terms of scientific argumentation, right? So science technically, in a lot of contexts, values things like rationality, about knowledge, right? So knowledge is seen as knowledge for its own sake. It's a terminal value that oftentimes is directly suggested and explicitly stated rather than implied. We see that in a variety of different religious contexts too, right? There is a value for God that might exist in numerous ways, but might be a terminal value or some sort of spirit or deity or something like that. There's questions of faith, so faith itself might be a terminal value, and you might see that engaging in certain things like good deeds might go to serve a terminal faith as being a good thing. So we see a variety of ways in both religious and scientific contexts in which values are used to relate things. We also see that, and as we'll talk about toward the end of the semester, those two systems oftentimes clash with each other. So there's different value systems that might not necessarily be compatible in every instance between scientific and religious argumentation. So what we ultimately see is that we understand what a value is, but we also know from this chapter that there's a lot more to values. So there's both positive and negative values. There's values that are instrumental and serve a terminal value. We see that values can be either explicitly stated or implied, and we see a lot of examples of values being used in action. So when you're thinking about the arguments that you might do for your argumentative essay and your topic paper, be thinking about what types of value claims you might be making and how you can use evidence to support particular values as being good for the particular decision makers that you're identifying with. So let me know if you have any questions, but that should do it for Chapter 8. Have a good one.